Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Research Like a Pro question and answer series. And this is a tip from our recent office hours session about how to anonymize DNA matches when you want to share one of your DNA research reports, maybe uploading it to Ancestry or FamilySearch, but you have a lot of DNA matches who are living individuals who need to be anonymized due to privacy concerns. So this just walks you through using your Airtable research log or whatever tool you're using to keep track of people and helping you add a new column or field to put down anonymized names or test taker number one or whatever their test taker number is, however you're doing it, to help you keep track of that and anonymize your charts and your research reports and all those things that go along with your report. So I hope you enjoy this little video with Diana as she talks about some tips for doing that.
So one of the challenges that we have is getting our DNA matches anonymized so that we can use them in other work products. And so what are some good ideas for doing this in our Airtable base? So first of all, why anonymize? Well, after you have gone to all the work to do your DNA project and you have written up a report and perhaps you have proven a line that you could not prove otherwise with DNA, which is what most of us are trying to do, you're going to want to share that. It could be online, it could be in a proof argument and published in a journal, or maybe just a report that you want to send around to your DNA matches or your cousins or people who've taken a test for you. And so unless you have permission from every single person that you're using their DNA test results for or matches, you'll have to anonymize. And you also could be creating some diagrams and tables for your report where you need to show all the DNA information, or you might be wanting to do a presentation, putting out some slides, doing some images, doing some things, and you want to portray the DNA, but you don't want to show names. So here's an example that I'll return to in a minute, but this was for a report I did showing this DNA group, all descending from my ancestors, Clemsy Cline and Henderson Weatherford. And I was doing the project to prove Clemsy Cline's connection to her father. I had discovered a hypothesized father for her in John C. Cline. And it was a Bern County research project, and there were no documentary records, and just some really thin slivers of indirect evidence that pointed towards John. And I wanted to use DNA to firm that up. And so I was able to find DNA matches coming down through each of Clemsy's children that matched my three primary test takers right here in green. And so I wanted to publish this, put this out on online trees and such. And so I needed to anonymize. And that might be just a step that could be a little bit tricky, making sure you know who is who once you've anonymized. So one of the things we can do is come up with a system that we like. So you will see here that I have taken the child's name. So in this case, we've got, see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Um, Eliza Jane Weatherford. And so the three matches I'm using, or four matches I'm using for her, I titled them Eliza 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I've got Mary Weatherford, and I've titled or given the anonymized names to those DNA matches of Mary 1 and Mary 2, and so forth. So this way, when I see a match in a table or another writing piece, I will know exactly who they are. So there's a lot of different names you can use for anonymizing your DNA matches. Some people just use something simple, match one, match two, match A, match B. You could just give them random names. If you're writing a lot about, a match in a report, it's probably easier for your reader to understand a name than to say match one or two. Or you could also do what I did and take the ancestor's name and have the name one and then name two so that we know who the descendants are coming through, an independent child line. So depending on your project, your report, what you're doing, you'll decide on what you want to use for your anonymized names. Now, a good place to track those would be in your Airtable research log. So we have our match details. Here's the test taker. Here are the DNA matches. And you'll see that I added a field right here after DNA matches for anonymized name. And then I just went through and I looked at each of the matches and determined, first of all, who I was going to use in my report. because out of all the many matches I had, I did not use every single one. So one of the things that I do is I see who is sharing the most DNA. So you'll see I have this sorted by the largest number of shared centimorgans down to the smallest. And so for each one of those independent lines, I would take the person who shared the most DNA with them and who had a good, strong pedigree going back to the common ancestor. And so looking at those two things, I chose the people I wanted to include in my report. And then I put in their names here so I could keep track of exactly who was who as I was working through this project. So this has been very helpful just to have this extra little field here in Airtable so I know who my DNA people are. So here is just a little bit of a work sample from my report. I have the three test takers here, Gary, myself, and Lucretia. And I had various people I was trying to show a connection with. Here's my Clemsy and her hypothesized father, John C. Cline, and a hypothesized sister I had discovered, Mihaela. And I found DNA connections for each of us to some of these descendants through Mihaela. And so I have Mihaela 1, Mihaela 2, and Mihaela 3. And I looked for just one DNA match coming down from each one of these lines. And so that's how I chose. I didn't put every single person in, but I just tried to get some independent lines there. And then to accompany this diagram in my report, I created this table. So I have my Mihaela Klein descendants, 1, 2, and 3. Oops, that should be a 3 there. And then I have the 3 of us who come from Clemsy, Diana, Lucretia, and Gary. And then I just put how much we each shared with Mihaela 1, how much we each shared with Mihaela 2, and how much we each shared with Mihaela 3. And that could um, provide some nice evidence that three of us are sharing DNA with these descendants. And you'll see that for Mihaela 2, only Gary shared and not that much. So it was interesting just to see the difference in our sharing. So I did this with each one of the people that I wanted to prove a connection to. Clemsy had a full sister, I believe, and two half sister and a half brother. And then I just use these two, a diagram and a table, these two images throughout the report, depending on the line, to show my proof. So that is one way that I have chosen to do anonymization in my report, and hopefully that gives you some ideas. All right, so I see we have a question. Do you anonymize DNA match data if you are working with AI? I only use DNA in AI programs that do not use it for any kind of their data. So for instance, I would use it in Claude because Claude doesn't use my data. But if I were to use it in something like Gemini, where they flat out say that they will use it in their training data, then I wouldn't anonymize it. Yeah, you just have to know your AI model and how they're going to use whatever you put in there. And so this would be actually a really good idea to do if you wanted to use AI and have it create tables for you to have your anonymized information already in your Airtable. And then you could go ahead and say, you could see what you could do with giving it some of this information and having it create some paragraphs or some tables for you to use.